Welcome back. If you are learning English, or really any complex skill, you know that rewarding feeling when a whole lot of information suddenly just, clicks.
That aha moment.
Exactly. And today we're kind of aiming to provide that shortcut. We're taking a focused look at a concept from the RuiEnglish course, word builders, from the ground up.
And that concept is something they call the vocabulary spectrum. It's an incredibly practical framework.
It really is.
The true goal isn't just knowing 1,000 more words. It's about knowing how to adjust your voice. It's this understanding that English, well, it isn't static.
It changes, it morphs depending on who you're talking to, where you are, what the goal is.
Right. And when you realize that, when you see that the language you use to order a coffee is supposed to be different from the language in a work proposal, a huge barrier just comes down.
That flexibility is absolutely key. It's what helps build a truly confident and capable English voice for long-term success.
And that awareness, just recognizing these different linguistic registers, it's so empowering for English language learners.
Yeah.
Well, it replaces that pressure, the pressure to have perfect English everywhere, with a strategy of using appropriate English for the moment.
Okay, let's unpack this fantastic spectrum then, starting at the foundational level, the language of social interaction.
The RuiEnglish lesson starts with the two most fundamental sets. That would be BICS and CALP.
Right, so let's start with BICS.
BICS stands for Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills. And you should think of BICS as the comfortable, fast language of daily life. It's what we call highly context embedded.
Meaning you can rely a lot on, facial expressions, hand gestures?
Exactly. And your shared surroundings. All of that helps make your meaning clear. It's the informal social register.
So the language of texting or chatting with your neighbors.
Or just hanging out with classmates.
Sure.
It's simple, it's direct, it's immediate. It's the kind of language you hear when someone says, "Hey, what's up?"
Or "I gotta head out, catch you later."
That's it. It's for managing those quick social interactions.
And this is the language that learners tend to pick up the fastest, right?
By far. Because it's so tied to immediate social settings, most learners get to a comfortable BICS level within, say, their first 1 to 3 years of steady exposure.
Which is a really inspiring milestone when you hit it.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the critical point the RuiEnglish lesson makes. If you stop there, you hit a plateau.
Ah.
Many learners get fluent in BICS and think, okay, I'm proficient, but then they struggle when they're asked to do more abstract or analytical tasks.
And that's because they're missing the next level?
They're missing CALP.
Okay, so that brings us to the more demanding end of this foundational spectrum, CALP, Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency.
And this is the structural, formal, analytical register. This is the language of academia, of research, of lectures, of detailed reports.
And unlike BICS, CALP is, what's the term?
Context reduced.
Context reduced, right.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on physical gestures or what's around you.
No, the language itself has to do all the heavy lifting. It has to carry the full weight of a complex idea.
So, if BICS helps you manage the social part of a study group, CALP is what helps you actually analyze the textbook chapter you're all supposed to be discussing.
That's a perfect way to put it. You need it for interpreting complex data, for synthesizing evidence, for explaining these multifaceted ideas with clarity. It's truly enriching knowledge.
And I imagine that cognitive load is why it takes so much longer to develop.
It is. The lesson really stresses this. While BICS might take 1 to 3 years, CALP, well, that typically takes 5 to 7 years of consistent academic study to develop fully.
Wow, that is a huge time difference.
It is, and just understanding that timeline helps so much. It reminds you that this is an inspiring long-term goal. It just requires consistency.
Let's get into why it takes longer. It's not just about learning bigger words, is it? It's a whole shift in how you structure the language.
That's it. This is where the aha insight from the material is so important. Let's use that famous contrast they provide. A learner using BICS might describe a study by saying something like, they did a study to look at the important link between sleep and how well the brain works.
Okay, simple, direct. I get it immediately.
Now, compare that to the CALP version. The experiment was conducted to analyze the significant correlation between sleep patterns and cognitive performance.
It sounds so different. It's more formal, obviously.
It is, but look closer at the structure. We go from a simple verb like did a study to a passive voice construction was conducted.
Okay.
And even more importantly, we shift from describing actions to describing concepts instead of how well the brain works, which is active.
We get cognitive performance, which is a noun.
It's a nominalization. That's the hallmark of CALP, turning a verb or an adjective into an abstract noun. We stop talking about things happening and start talking about abstract processes.
And that's why the technique in the RuiEnglish activity is so effective. It has you practice matching sentences like, the hypothesis was validated with academic vocabulary.
Yes, it forces you to actively engage with that formal structure. It's not passive. That mastery of CALP is so important, not just for exams, but for really engaging with complex ideas and expressing nuanced thought. It's critical for future success.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, especially for our listeners who are aiming for professional growth.
Right.
Once you have BICS for social comfort and CALP for analytical thought, how do you navigate the workplace? We need to transition to the professional registers.
And that brings us to business English. It sits in this fascinating middle ground on the spectrum.
How so?
Well, it borrows some of the formality and precision from CALP, but it's also constrained by the need for urgency and clarity, which is more like a BICS environment.
Okay.
It's formal, but it's highly practical, always focused on outcomes.
That makes sense. A workplace meeting isn't an academic essay, but it's not a casual chat either.
Not at all. The language has to be professional, polite, and above all, efficient. You can't spend 5 minutes on the theoretical implications of something.
You need to discuss the actionable steps to move forward.
That efficiency really defines it. We see it in emails, presentations, client meetings. The vocabulary is all about consensus, execution, and review.
And you start to hear those specific phrases, the ones that signal professional intent. Things like, let's schedule a meeting to review the results.
Or, we need to follow up on the next steps. They're polite, they're clear, and they drive action.
We also use slightly more formal words. Instead of ask for, you request information.
And instead of tell, you advise or inform. Mastering this register is so motivating because you can see the direct impact it has on your career. It opens doors.
The activity in the source material has a great check for this, contrasting a business English phrase with an academic one.
It does. Something like, let's schedule a meeting to review the results, versus,
here the research is required to support the findings. You immediately see that shift from action to pure analysis.
and this professional focus takes us all the way to the far end of the spectrum, to specialized vocabulary.
The destination for so many learners.
This is a truly edifying step. This is where you're no longer just a proficient English speaker. You're a proficient engineer who speaks English.
Or a proficient doctor or lawyer who speaks English.
We're talking about fields where accuracy is just paramount. Medicine, law, aviation, finance, you name it.
And why does this hyper-precise language matter so much?
Because in these fields, a misunderstanding isn't just awkward. It can lead to huge operational failures, financial losses.
Or even serious safety issues. Ambiguity is the enemy here.
Think about it. A patient doesn't just have a stomachache, they report abdominal discomfort. A pilot doesn't say, I need to land quickly.
No, they use controlled, standardized language, specific navigational terms.
And legal contracts, well, they rely on centuries-old language about statutes and rights for a reason. The vocabulary is chosen for legal precision, not for being pleasant.
And you learn this through targeted studies, certifications, and just being immersed in that specific industry.
Right. It demonstrates the ultimate flexibility of English. And knowing that this final layer exists is essential for anyone planning their path to professional success.
What's so powerful about the RuiEnglish lesson is how it brings all of this together. It gives you a single usable model.
A mental map.
A mental map, from casual BICS all the way up to this precise, specialized language. It gives you the conscious flexibility to adapt your voice to any context you face.
And that's holistic growth. It's not just about the quantity of words you know, but the sophistication and the utility. This awareness strengthens everything.
Yeah.
Your personal life, your academics, your career success.
Absolutely. The whole point of this activity is to give you that confidence to choose the right words for the right situation, so you're always feeling prepared and, energized for any challenge.
It's about moving through the world with the appropriate voice, which means you're always being respectful of the context.
So to wrap things up, we want to leave you with a final and genuinely motivating challenge from the lesson's Reflect task.
It's a way to connect what you're studying right now to your future ambitions. Think about a job you are really interested in pursuing.
That career path that truly excites you.
Now, based on what we've just discussed about specialized vocabulary, try to identify 3 words or expressions that you think would be essential in that field.
Words that would immediately signal that you belong in that context.
You might already know them. Or maybe they are new words you need to make a priority in your studies. Just writing them down, making them a goal. It's a small step.
But it's a focused one. It immediately links your language learning to your future professional life.
And that type of focused, contextual learning, that's the definition of efficiency. That's what leads to tremendous rapid success.
Keep defining your voice.
Did you know that it takes up to 7 years to master academic English? That's right. Even if you can chat fluently in English, you might still struggle with textbooks and lectures.
And that's exactly what makes understanding different types of English vocabulary so crucial.
Today, we're breaking down the fascinating world of English vocabulary, from casual conversation to academic discourse and everything in between.
Let's start with something called BSS, Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills.
That sounds pretty technical for basic communication.
Well, it's actually quite simple. BICS is just everyday English, the kind you use for greetings, small talk, and casual conversations.
Like saying, "Hey, what's up?" instead of "Good afternoon."
Exactly. And most learners develop these skills within 1 to 3 years of exposure to English.
That doesn't sound too bad. But there's more to it, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. That's where CALP comes in, Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency.
And that's the 7-year journey you mentioned?
Yes, 5 to 7 years to develop proper academic English skills. It's the language you need for analyzing, interpreting evidence, and writing essays.
You know, it's like building with Legos. You start with the big, simple blocks before moving to the complex technical sets.
That's a great analogy. And just like Legos, each piece serves a specific purpose.
So how can we tell the difference between basic and academic language?
Here's a clear example, saying they did a study about sleep and how the brain works versus the experiment analyzed the correlation between sleep patterns and cognitive performance.
Wow. Same meaning, but completely different language.
Exactly. And then there's business English, which sits right in the middle.
Tell me more about that. How does business English fit in? Business English is formal enough for professional settings, but practical enough for daily workplace communication. Like what you'd use in meetings and emails?
Precisely. You'll hear phrases like meet the requirements or follow up. Not too casual, not too academic.
That makes sense. It's like a bridge between everyday talk and academic writing.
And it's essential for success in international companies.
But wait, there's even more specialized vocabulary, right?
Yes. Take aviation, for example. Pilots and air traffic controllers use very specific language for safety.
I imagine mistakes there could be pretty serious.
Absolutely. That's why each professional field has its own specialized vocabulary, from maritime work to medicine to law.
So doctors need their medical terms.
Right, they talk about symptoms and diagnoses, while lawyers use vocabulary about rights and contracts.
And this specialized vocabulary comes through training and experience?
Exactly. It's learned over time in real professional situations.
So we've got basic conversation, academic language, business English, and specialized vocabulary.
And each serves a different purpose in different contexts.
It's fascinating how English adapts to different needs.
And that's what makes mastering these different types so important for learners.
But it must be challenging to switch between these different types of English.
It is, but with practice and awareness, learners can develop this flexibility.
What's the best way to start building these different vocabulary sets?
Start with basic communication skills, then gradually expand into academic and professional vocabulary based on your goals.
Like building blocks, adding one layer at a time?
Exactly. And each block makes your foundation stronger.
Are there any specific resources you'd recommend?
The Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English is excellent for general vocabulary.
And for academic vocabulary?
Academic word lists and subject-specific textbooks are great resources.
What about business English?
Professional journals and business communication guides can be very helpful.
It sounds like a journey that never really ends.
That's true. Language learning is a continuous process of growth and adaptation.
But understanding these different types of vocabulary makes the journey clearer.
And more manageable, you can focus on what you need most at each stage.
What's the most common mistake learners make?
Using overly academic language in casual situations, or too informal language in professional settings.
Like using commence instead of start in a casual conversation?
Exactly. Context is key. So it's not just about learning words, but knowing when to use them. That's the real skill, understanding the appropriate context for different types of vocabulary.
And that comes with time and practice?
Yes, and exposure to different situations where English is used.
Any final advice for our listeners?
Don't rush the process. Focus on mastering one type of vocabulary at a time.
And remember that 7-year timeline for academic English.
Right, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful.
I hope it helps listeners understand their own language learning journey better.
From basic conversation to specialized professional vocabulary, it's all about building blocks.
And each block takes you closer to your language goals.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, whether you're aiming for casual chat or academic discourse, there's a vocabulary type for that.